It was a breezy Saturday evening, one of those evenings when families gathered at the small park on the edge of Fairfield, Connecticut. The sun was beginning to dip low, casting a soft glow over the area. Children kicked soccer balls around, their laughter echoing through the air, while teens sat on benches, lost in their phones and music, each caught in their own world. Michael, a 17-year-old, was among them. He sat alone under a tall oak tree, waiting for his younger brother, Jordan, to finish up soccer practice. Their mother had asked him to wait so they could walk home together. Michael, looking more refined than most of the teenagers around him, wore a fitted black suit, a crisp white shirt, and polished black shoes. He wasn't there to draw attention, but rather to enjoy the solitude, flipping through the pages of a book he'd brought along. Then the sound of rumbling motorcycles broke the calm of the evening, the deep roar of their engines louder than usual in the quiet park. Michael didn't think much of it at first, just a group of bikers passing through, making their presence known. But soon, something felt off. The bikers didn't ride through, they rolled in, parking their bikes near the soccer field. 5 men dressed in dark leather jackets and worn jeans stood out starkly against the peaceful families gathered nearby. The air around them was heavy, almost charged. They weren't laughing or chatting. Instead, they stood in eerie silence, their eyes sweeping the park, and then, as if they had all noticed something at once, their gaze fixed on Michael. He didn't know what to make of it, but a chill ran through him. They were watching him, their stares sharp and deliberate, like hunters eyeing their prey. Michael, trying to keep his composure, glanced up for a split second, meeting the gaze of one of the men. His stomach tightened, but he forced himself to look back down at his book. The calm he had fought so hard to maintain started to slip, and as he turned another page, he could feel the weight of their attention on him, a sense of unease creeping in. The bikers didn't stay near their bikes for long. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, nudged his companion and nodded toward Michael. The next thing he knew, the group was moving toward him. Michael could hear their heavy footsteps crunching against the gravel, the sound of leather boots growing louder as they approached. Michael's heart raced in his chest, the sound of it almost deafening in his own ears, but his face remained unreadable, controlled. He remembered his mother's voice, steady and strong in his mind. Never let them see you sweat. He gripped the book tightly in his hands, trying to hold on to that calm exterior, but inside his mind was racing. "What's a kid like you doing here?" the burly man growled, his voice rough and direct, cutting through the air. Michael hesitated, his mind briefly lost in the confusion of the question. He glanced up, then back down at his book, his brow furrowed. "Waiting for my brother," he answered, his voice steady but firm, betraying no fear. The man smirked, exchanging a knowing look with his friends. "Doesn't look like this is your kind of place," he said, the words heavy with an underlying message, a subtle but sharp insult that Michael couldn't ignore. Michael's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "It's a public park," he replied, his voice steady as he met the biker's gaze without flinching. The smirk faded from the burly man's face, replaced by a look that hardened into something more dangerous. "Got a smart mouth, huh?" he sneered, stepping closer. The other 2 bikers spread out, forming a loose semicircle around him, closing the space. The park, usually filled with the laughter of children and the chatter of families, now felt eerily quiet around Michael. He glanced quickly around, hoping for someone to notice, but the bikers had timed this well. Everyone's attention was still on the soccer field, where Jordan's game was winding down. Michael's mind raced. He wasn't scared, not yet. But the situation was shifting, and he could feel it. Years of karate had taught him to stay calm, to observe every movement, to anticipate danger before it came. But he also knew that fighting wasn't the first solution. It was the last resort. "I don't want any trouble," Michael said, his tone calm yet firm as he met the biker's gaze. "I'm just here for my brother." The burly man didn't step back. Instead, he leaned in, his face hovering a little too close for comfort. "Trouble? Who said anything about trouble?" His voice dropped low, taunting, a dangerous edge to it. Michael could feel the weight of their eyes on him, the challenge in their posture. His hands rested casually on his knees, but he was ready. He could sense everything, their every move, every shift in stance, every subtle breath they took. But still, he held his ground. The burly man, clearly hoping to provoke him, leaned in even closer. "Maybe you should show us what you've got," he sneered, his friends chuckling softly behind him. But Michael didn't flinch. His hands remained still, his posture relaxed, though his eyes never left the biker in front of him. He had been trained to read people, to understand what their movements and gestures meant, to see through the facade and into their intentions. These men weren't here to talk, and it was becoming all too clear. The burly man, expecting Michael to crumble under the pressure, leaned down, his shadow falling over him. "What's the matter, kid? You scared?" he taunted, his voice low and challenging. Michael exhaled slowly, his breath steady. He didn't answer immediately. Fear wasn't the problem. What concerned him was time. How long until Jordan's game ended? How long until someone in the park noticed what was happening? How long before he was outnumbered? "Leave him alone," Michael said quietly, his voice calm but firm. But before anything could escalate, a young voice rang out, cutting through the tension like a knife. "Michael!" Michael turned slightly, his heart lurching when he saw his little brother Jordan standing just a few yards away, sweat still glistening on his forehead from the game. The kid was too young to be caught up in this, but there he was, too close for comfort. "Jordan, stay back," Michael called out urgently, his eyes never leaving the bikers, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Leave him alone!" Michael's voice was firm, but the bikers turned toward Jordan, their grins widening like predators spotting an easier target. One of them pointed a gloved finger at Jordan, his tone mocking as he asked, "Is this your brother?" Michael's stomach tightened, but it wasn't fear that surged through him. It was resolve. His pulse quickened, and the fight-or-flight instinct kicked in. Slowly, deliberately, he stood up, never breaking eye contact with the group. His body shifted, planting his feet into a stance he had practiced over and over in the dojo, the stance that would carry him through this. "Don't touch him." Michael's voice was calm, but it held a sharp edge to it, a warning he would not back down from. The burly biker threw his head back in laughter, shaking his head. "Look at this guy. Thinks he's tough," he sneered, and the others joined in, their laughter filling the air, louder than the cicadas in the trees. But Michael didn't flinch. His posture remained unwavering, his expression stone cold. The silence around him only made the bikers more uneasy than they realized. "You're not going to do anything," one of the bikers scoffed, taking a step closer, trying to provoke him. Michael's response was quiet, but it cut through the air with an authority that demanded attention. "You don't want to do this." The laughter stopped. The bikers exchanged uncertain glances, confused by the confidence in his voice. For a moment, there was hesitation. But that hesitation didn't last long. The burly man took another step forward, his hand raised, ready to shove Michael, thinking it would intimidate him. What happened next was so fast, so precise, that even the bikers couldn't react in time. But Michael was already a step ahead. As the burly biker lunged forward aiming to shove him, Michael shifted with lightning speed, sidestepping with practiced precision. It was as if he'd anticipated the move before it happened. The biker stumbled, thrown off balance, his momentum lost. But Michael didn't stop there. In one smooth motion, Michael stepped in close and struck. His palm hit the man's wrist with pinpoint accuracy, twisting it forcefully. The burly biker let out a grunt, his face contorting in pain as his hand dropped uselessly to his side. He staggered back, his fury now clear in his eyes. "What the—" the man began, his words faltering. "I warned you," Michael said, his voice still steady, his demeanor unshaken, as if this was just another drill in the dojo. The other two bikers, clearly underestimating him, rushed forward without hesitation. The first one threw a wild punch, his fist aimed straight at Michael's face. But Michael ducked effortlessly, his body gliding under the punch like water flowing around a rock. In one swift motion, he extended his leg, delivering a sharp kick to the man's knee. The biker howled in pain as his leg buckled beneath him, collapsing to the ground with a cry. The second biker hesitated just long enough for Michael to take advantage of the moment. With a quick pivot, Michael spun on his heel and unleashed a spinning kick into the side of the man's ribs. The force of the blow knocked the air out of him, and he staggered backward, clutching his side, his breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. By now, the burly leader had recovered from the shock of the attack. His face was bright red with anger, and he charged at Michael, fists flying in the wild, uncontrolled swings. But Michael didn't meet brute force with brute force. Instead, he stayed light on his feet, dodging the punches with the grace and agility that came only from years of training. His movements were fluid, a dance of evasion, each step calculated, each counterstrike perfectly timed. A crowd had begun to gather at the edge of the park, drawn by the sounds of the confrontation. Parents, children, even soccer players, all had stopped what they were doing to watch the spectacle unfold. Someone had pulled out a phone, capturing every moment on camera, the lens focused on the unexpected fight. The leader lunged again, this time attempting to grab Michael by the lapel of his jacket. But Michael, ever composed, was ready. Michael swiftly evaded the burly man's attempt to grab the lapel of his suit jacket, moving faster than anyone could have anticipated. With a fluid motion, he twisted free from the biker's grip, his body a blur as he delivered a precise strike to the man's solar plexus. The biker staggered back, gasping for air, his once formidable appearance cracking under the pressure of Michael's calm and controlled demeanor. "Enough," Michael said, his voice cutting through the tension, loud enough to echo across the park. His stance remained strong, but his expression showed no anger, only an unwavering resolve. "I don't want to hurt you. Walk away." For a brief moment it seemed as though the bikers might listen. The burly leader clutched his chest, wheezing and glaring at Michael, his chest rising and falling as he struggled to regain composure. The other two bikers were still on the ground, one cradling his knee, the other holding his ribs. The air was thick with tension, but Michael remained steady, his calmness unnerving. "Let's go," the leader growled, his voice filled with frustration as he waved for his friends to follow. Reluctantly, they limped back to their bikes, muttering curses under their breath. The sound of their engines roared to life, but just as they began to pull away, the leader turned back. His finger pointed accusingly at Michael. "This ain't over, kid," he spat, his words dripping with venom before he revved his engine and sped off with his crew. Michael stood there, unmoving, his breathing steady as the sounds of their engines faded into the distance. The tension in the air began to dissipate, and soon murmurs of admiration rippled through the small crowd that had gathered to witness the scene. Applause followed, soft at first, but growing louder as the reality of what had just unfolded sank in. Jordan ran up to Michael, his eyes wide with both fear and awe. "Michael, are you okay?" His voice trembled, concern etched across his young face. Michael knelt down, placing a reassuring hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'm fine," he said softly, offering a small but genuine smile. "Let's go home." As they walked away from the park, the weight of the moment lingered with Michael. Despite the victory, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end of the story. Not yet. The two brothers walked in silence, the sound of their sneakers tapping against the sidewalk the only noise between them. Jordan kept sneaking glances at Michael, his expression a mix of awe and lingering worry. Finally, he couldn't hold it in any longer. "Michael," Jordan said, his voice barely above a whisper, "how did you do all that? I mean, they were huge, and there were 3 of them." Michael chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's not about being bigger, Jordan," he explained, his voice calm and steady. "It's about being prepared, staying calm, and knowing when to act." Jordan frowned, his brow furrowing with concern. "But what if they come back? That guy said it wasn't over." Michael stopped walking, turning to face his little brother. His tone became serious, his eyes focused as he spoke. "If they do, we'll handle it," he said, his words firm but reassuring. "But listen to me, Jordan. What happened today wasn't about fighting. It was about standing up for myself, and for you. But violence isn't the answer unless it's the only option." Jordan nodded slowly, processing his brother's words. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Remember, it's not about proving how strong you are," he said gently. "It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone take that away from you." When they arrived home, their mom was waiting on the porch, her arms crossed and a concerned look on her face. "You're late," she said, her voice laced with worry. Michael hesitated, glancing at Jordan, who stayed silent. Something had clearly happened, and he knew he couldn't hide it from her. "There was an incident at the park," Michael admitted, choosing his words carefully. He didn't want to cause her more worry than necessary, but he also felt it was important to be honest. "But everything's okay now." As Michael recounted the events to his mother, her expression shifted from concern to a deep, silent pride. She listened closely, her lips pressed tight, but her eyes glimmered with emotion as she absorbed every word. "Michael," she said, her voice steady but filled with an unspoken strength, "I'm proud of you, for protecting your brother, for standing your ground. But promise me one thing. Don't ever take risks like that unless there's no other choice." "I promise," Michael replied, his voice firm, as the weight of his words settled in his chest. And he meant it. That night, as he lay in his bed, the events played over and over in Michael's mind. The biker's aggression, the crowd's astonished reaction, the leader's last words, "This ain't over, kid." But Michael didn't feel fear. He'd learned long ago that fear only holds power if you let it. Instead, he felt something else, a quiet, unshakable sense of purpose. The world was often unfair, and it was moments like these that reminded him how courage and discipline could tilt the scales, even if just for a moment. Deep down, he knew this encounter wasn't merely a test of his physical skills. It was a reminder that standing up for what's right, even in the face of overwhelming odds, was always worth it. Michael's story is a testament to resilience, preparation, and the unwavering belief in doing what's right. His calm confidence in the face of danger shows us that true strength doesn't come from size, power, or intimidation. It's found in understanding your own worth and acting with integrity. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on how you can stand up for yourself or for someone else in tough situations. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right, even when fear is present. If you found inspiration in Michael's journey, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own inner strength. And subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Because sometimes the quietest voices make the strongest impact.